Coming into our first segment of the show, we have Unspoken Truths. This is where we get real. It's a space dedicated to open, honest conversations about mental health, well being, and the struggle that so many of us go through, but often don't talk about enough. Because let's be real, mental health is just as important as physical health. And the more we speak about it, the more we break the stigma. So, of course, I had to bring in the best person to have this conversation with me today. And Alhamdulillah, we have none other than Mahdiyyah Mungalee joining us. Many of you already know her, especially if you've tuned into the show before, because Mahdiyyah from Benoni is that Mahdiyyah, the one who always sends through the sweetest messages, the one who's an absolute star when it comes to commenting during the show, always securing that first position, mashallah. But beyond that, Mahdiya is a true jack of all trades. She's a mental health and wellness activist, someone who is deeply passionate about creating safe spaces for people to heal, reflect, and grow. She's also an educator at Back to Basics Maktab at Darul Raha, working on strengthening foundational Islamic learning. And if that wasn't enough, she's also a birth doula known as Doula Dia, helping mothers through one of the most profound experiences of their lives. You can find her work in mental health and mental health advocacy over at Shukr Hope Sakina on Instagram, where she shares wisdom, support, and encouragement for those struggling with their mental well being. And for her work as a doula, you can check her out at Doula Dia. She's doing so much. And honestly, she's just a gem of a person. I'm so happy to have her on to the show today and sit down and have this much needed conversation. So let's not waste any more time. Assalamu alaikum, Mahdiya.
Wa alaikum assalam, Ummah Moruledi. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm well. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah for that very warm welcome. I don't know if I'm the best
Ameen.
person, but I appreciate the shout nonetheless.
I think we're going to do very well together, inshallah.
Ameen, ameen.
All right. Getting right into it. My first question to you is, what's one mistake young people make when dealing with stress, and how can they handle it better?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri. I think one of the things that young kids, especially today, Umama, have found themselves in is a space of isolation. And
Mm,
I say this almost ironically because there's a lot of avenues for them to connect, but they, I think, maybe just being in their heads a lot, and also just like a lot of pressure from all different avenues, I think it really really isolates them. And so that obviously is going to increase their stress levels, because I think they, being in that own isolated bubble, it almost feels like I'm all alone. There's absolutely no one who has got my back. I can't rely on anyone. Everything feels so essentially, like everything just feels so like out there, like who do I turn to, who do I reach? And then beyond that, again, with the pressure from like school, from just the state of the world, how it is today, I think it really just builds on it. And especially when you're so young, going into the world, that again, it just feels like you're all alone. So
mm,
I think that's genuinely one of the biggest things for them, is that uh, I've been like like feeling a lot about like community lately, which is essentially just like making spaces where you can interact with people who are on the same wavelength as you, people who uplift you, people who you guys can impact each other in a beneficial way, and you can essentially like help each other grow and learn. And I feel like we really are lacking a lot of those spaces in our youth, in like the areas of our youth especially.
yes, I get what you're saying, and it's honestly very, very hard for a lot of young kids, for teenagers, because, like you said, not having that community, not having a space where they can talk about their feelings and be understood, constantly dealing with stress of school, of life, it can be truly, truly humbling, even if you want to say that, because
Mm.
you just don't catch a break. It can be really, really hard. And with that, my next question to you is, if a teenager feels overwhelmed but doesn't know where to start, what's the first thing you tell them to do?
To take a deep, deep breath,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be okay. I think also just the catastrophizing aspect of life nowadays is that everything feels like extremely overwhelming. And so I think just like coming to yourself and sitting down and saying, you know what, it's okay. It's a bit, it's intense right now, but I've got this, you know, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna make it through. And building off from my previous point about how the isolation really gets to people is, this is it, I know it's not exactly like a be all fix all, but finding people who feel like your people who get you on a level where like I said, people who don't, they give you that like growth aspect, you know, in your relationships, where you're
Mm,
not feeling like I don't have to do the struggle all by myself. I don't have to be overwhelmed all by myself. There are people out there who perhaps are even struggling just like me. If they can't, if they can't come to me, at least I should go to them. You know, let me try and find my people who we can all help to uplift each other. And
mm,
right, I think, yeah, just building communities where they can genuinely just feel like they cared about, you know, and they cared for. Because especially, I think also there's so many unprecedented challenges that our kids have today that I suppose, like we say, it wasn't like that back in the day, but I mean, like, we wouldn't really know, right? But like when you hear like our parents speak about things, it's such a huge generational gap between the two, that really essentially the challenges they have today is not the challenges that our parents had, or definitely not what our grandparents had. And so
mm.
finding people who are on the same wavelength as them and who can kind of like get that this is what we're struggling with right now, I think it's really just super transformational for them.
Yeah, you know, what you're saying is just so profound. And I'm going to keep saying that over and over because it just needed to be said. And I think it couldn't be said any better, honestly, that having community is one of the most important things. And, you know, I was having this conversation just yesterday that I want to make my online presence, now that I'm just starting my Umama Luan era, that it needs to be a community, you know? It needs to be somewhere where people like me, kids my age, can, you know, have that community and know that there's somewhere that they can go where they can feel themselves, where they can express themselves without being judged,
Yeah,
without
yeah.
feeling like they're saying something that just doesn't make sense. We never went this our day, you're insane, you know, where they just
Yeah,
heard. So I think that's something that we definitely need to try and work towards as a people, you know, as a Gen
yeah,
Z,
yeah.
if we want to use it as that, to create community for each other and just be there for each other. Um, my
I
next
don't
question
know.
is,
I don't know
yeah,
if I'm a Gen Z, hey Umamalu. I think I might be a millennial, but you know
I
what?
don't think you're a
Crossing
millennial.
crossing the generational divide. I think it's really beautiful just to have that intention, actually, like you're saying, going into
Mm,
spaces like this. I mentioned to you about the program last week and how much I absolutely enjoyed it. Just getting the opportunity to see people who experience life in a like slightly different way than I do, but also at the same time feel so very much like people who I could interact with and build a
yeah.
community with on like a daily basis. It's brilliant to come together in the divide, you know, like we all have these things that make us so unique and so different, and instead of like letting it be a means of, oh, you look like, you like this and you like that and you from this place and you from that place, instead of being like that, like, I appreciate your uniqueness, I think that's fantastic, let me learn from that, let me grow with that, let's become
Mhm.
people who hold each other up, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. And I think that's the thing also with building community. You find people from other spaces, other sides of the of life that you didn't know about, you know. There's so many people outside of your bubble, outside of your community, outside of your area that live life so differently or so similar to you, but in a different way. You know, some would say in a different font, but
Mm,
you know,
100%.
they live it so different. They live it so differently, and that could be beneficial for your life and for their life. So building that community, coming together, and just knowing people, doing things with people, it can really really help a person emotionally, mostly, because you know, you just have that outreach. You have people around you who live the same life as you, or not the same life as you, but are going through the same challenges.
Mm, yeah.
My next question is, What's a quick everyday habit that can help young people reduce anxiety without feeling like it's a huge effort?
They should go outside and touch some grass. um, I think that especially nowadays, because of how reliant we are on technology, on like I'm literally speaking to you via my computer,
Mhm.
it's gotten to like a point where I think that we spend so much of time just on our devices indoors, and it's not like to say that there's no benefit or anything. I know I have so many beautiful communities online that I interact with. I teach online as well. Shukurub Sakina is an online platform, so I don't ever discount the services that it brings. But
Mm.
subhanallah, I also think that when those things become like the be all and end all, it really does detract from just the genuine connection that you can get from people like outside in the real world, but also from spending time in nature, from connecting with just like with with the like connecting with the ground, going out, standing barefoot in the grass, going out into nature. My abba is a he does survival skills training, so he essentially takes people out into the bush and he teaches them how to like make something of themselves in the bush. And the way that kids have been transformed, the confidence that they build, the amount of like just joy that they receive from being out in the world, like
Yeah.
it's one thing to sit behind my computer screen and I can like build a house in Minecraft, for example. It's another thing
Yeah.
to go out like into the wild and build like a shelter, or to go out and procure water or something like that. And it doesn't have to be that deep, right? It doesn't have to be you go out in some big camp and you make something like huge, but like even just to make the time to like take a hike or go and sit in your backyard in your garden and just notice things, like look at the leaves, look at the
Mhm.
birds, feel the sun on your skin, like slow down for a little while. I notice this a lot also, like I don't mean it specifically only for for like younger people, but also like for myself now that I've started working and things, I find often it's something I really really lack, like just spending time out in nature, not like any expectations, not having to worry about, oh, I have to do this work and that work and I have to do 105 other things, just connecting with nature, connecting with myself, and then also obviously ultimately that means connecting with Allah Ta'ala, which
Mm.
is the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. I think what's so profound is my mother always says, go outside and go touch some grass. You just need to ground yourself sometimes. You need to just relax and, release everything that's going on in your body into the earth. Just take that time out because, like you're saying, we spend so much time on our phones with technology and it consumes you so much to a point that that's all you have, that's all you know. To
Yeah,
relax, you use it, to work, you use it. There's nothing outside of being online. And I think what your dad is doing is something that's so important, and it's something that needs to be done more often because you have these kids, the teenagers that want to go out, they want to do something with their life, but they aren't avenues for that. And I think another one that comes to mind is example like the Dean team, where they take the boys out, they go for weekends, during the holidays they'll go for a week, they do horse riding, they do all of these really fun activities. But it's being outside and knowing that everything that you're doing while you're in nature, you're grounding yourself, but it's all with that Islamic ethos into it, it's all with
yeah,
an Islamic background. And I think that's a really, really good thing. And a lot of people should go for things like this, create things like this to help the youth and really just everyone in general to ground yourself and just take some time out for yourself, you know?
yeah, yeah, no, definitely.
With that being said, my next question kind of ties into your answer to the previous one. Is if a young girl constantly compares herself to influencers online, what's the first thing she should do to break that cycle?
Oof. I really love the discussion that you guys did last week on just like how much we seen on like on our screens, and I also think in daily life that just isn't necessarily the truth. Um,
Yeah.
I think that I have a two-pointer on this one here. Number one, for daily life, and I know it's not something that comes necessarily easily, especially like considering all the challenges around it. But coming into like spaces, being so uniquely yourself and being confident in what it is that you bring to the table. Because I don't think a lot of people realize how much they bring to the table just by being who they are. Being
Mm.
that uniqueness that you have in the world, it really, really, it creates ripple effects. It's genuinely, subhanallah, I every single person has something important that they have to offer. So I think that just that comparison, it's a very unfair comparison, because who essentially, who are you comparing yourself to if there's nobody who's like you know?
Mm.
And I think, for the second part is that if constantly what you're seeing on social media is bringing you down, then I think it's time for a feed cleanse. Hey, I think it's time to go
Definitely.
through. Let's go through those follows and let's see who's on that list that's not making me feel good, that's not making me feel like, because essentially, I think that one of the most beautiful things about social media, and I'm an Instagram girl, right? One of the
Yeah.
things that I absolutely love about it is that I can go on and I can read a few posts and I can come out with completely new perspectives, with amazing like things that I've learned. I have literally the access to the world's doctors, mental health professionals, alimas at my fingertips, and
Yeah.
obviously it's not by any means a replacement for any of those things, but for a person who is seeking community, for a person who is seeking these things that really, like knowledge that's beneficial, things that you really want to learn, there's so much out there. And I know they say a lot that like if your feed is a little bit sketchy, then that's kind of on you, because that algorithm knows what it's doing, right?
Yeah.
um so if it's getting to a point genuinely where I'm opening these apps and I'm on them all the time, right? Because that's the thing, like you said, it's this addictive thing that I'm going on all the time. But every time I'm refreshing this feed, I'm not liking what I'm seeing.
Mm.
It's your phone, it's your Instagram. You just go, you just do a little bit of maintenance work, and inshallah, like I do think that we have a lot more control than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, yeah. I think I've seen it a lot with maybe like people who are trying to, I don't know how to even explain it. I've seen a lot of people saying, I'm taking a mental health break from social media. I'm taking a mental health break from social media. And it's a really, really good thing. I think a lot of people should do it because sometimes your feed, like you said, you did it yourself, but your feed becomes so filled with things that are negative for you, things that are bringing you down, things that are consuming you to a point that it becomes unhealthy for you. So sometimes you just have to take that step back and just relax, take time off the social media apps or do a thorough cleaning. Go and unfollow
Mhm.
everyone, follow new people, and see new people, find new things. Because sometimes also if you're following the right people but you're seeing the same thing over and over and over again, and it's the only thing that you see, it's the only thing that your mind is glued to, you're not seeing what social media can give you. It's a world on its own, and there's so much that you have right at your fingertips, but you're not able to get to that because you're only focusing on who you follow, you're only focusing on what you see on your timeline, instead of going out there and finding more people that can benefit you and benefit your life through social media. Okay, my next question is, what's one mindset
Yeah.
or a mindset shift that can help teenagers feel confident in their own skin even when they don't fit today's beauty trends?
Hmm. That's a bit of a hard one, right? I think it also kind of goes back to
Sorry.
the one that you just mentioned. I don't have all the answers, right? I mean, I'm also constantly learning. I'm also constantly having these anxieties, these insecurities. They come up all the time, right?
Yeah.
So like I don't know everything, but I have noticed that like, again, just knowing your worth and your value and what you bring to the table, right? Like, I mean, it's not really necessarily going to matter to you if someone comes and they're like super highly qualified, and like you feeling like really like if you know that I also have qualifications, or maybe if I don't have qualifications, I also bring important stuff, to the conversation. I have things that I can say. I have hobbies, I have things that I'm excited about. you're not going to feel that like thing of, oh, why is this person so much greater than I am? And
Mm.
I think just like really being very gentle with your own process and your timeline, I think there's like always
Yeah.
this big rush that I need to get to this like imaginary destination in the clouds that's like I don't know at what, like level 100 or something. And spoiler alert, it doesn't exist. Or if it
Yeah.
existed for someone else, oh, it's not going to exist in the same way for you. Every single person's path and process is completely unique and different and individual to them. I think also
Mm.
just um, as a person who is still on the like road and recovery to connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely, right? One of the things that I've really like one of the things that like on the days when it really is difficult, I remind myself that there's all of these things that are happening all over in the world. But at the core of everything is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and love. It's Allah
Yeah.
subhanahu wa ta'ala's perfection in the way that He does things. And then beyond that, I think if you want to talk specifically to the beauty standards, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you with His own hand individually to perfection, that there is
Mm.
absolutely no one else in the world who is just like you. And I promise, if there was someone who was meant to be just like you, Allah Ta'ala would have created them that way, but He didn't. So I think just being aware that, you know what, I am who I am, and that's enough, you know?
Yeah. I think a lot of people need to remember this. Write it down if you must, that there's no one like you. You know, what you're saying is just so powerful, honestly. Subhanallah. Because, these are things that we don't tell ourselves enough. These are things that we don't remember enough, that you're the only person like that. There's no one like you. You're so unique. You're perfect. This is the way you are. Allah has never made something that was imperfect. Everything is perfect. So you need to just cut yourself some slack, take some time to remember that it's okay. You are fine the way that you are, and it's gonna be okay, at the end of it all.
I promise it
Um,
is. I promise it
one-
is.
yeah. My next question is, what are three signs that a young person needs to ask for help, even if they think they can handle things alone?
Okay, so first of all, the fact that you are a young person in today's world, it means I'm not saying it for anything. You need help, not because there's anything inherently wrong with you, but because again, it comes back to the fact that whoever you are, wherever you are, we are not islands. We need connection. We need people who get us. We need spaces where we feel supported. We need spaces where we feel loved, right? That's the bare minimum basic. Beyond that, obviously, there's genuine mental health issues, mental, like things that we are genuinely struggling with that make day to day difficult. I'm not a mental health, like, I'm not a professional in the field of like counseling or therapy work. So I'm obviously not going to like pretend to be something I'm not. However,
Mm-hmm.
I do encourage you that if you are noticing things that are consistently coming up that are making it difficult, difficulty with the concentration, difficulty with the focus, finding yourself in like really bad dips very often, finding yourself, the basics, like I'm oversleeping all the time, even though like I just like had a full night's rest, I'm feeling alone and overwhelmed all the time. I don't feel connected to my salah. I don't feel connected to my Quran. Like, I find it very difficult to engage in deen work. I find it very difficult to engage in things that are productive in general. Um,
Mm.
I don't think that it's a one size fits all by any means, and obviously like every issue has its own set of like stuff that goes with it. But I think on a basic level, when you start to notice that things have become a bit much, like I'm struggling to handle it by myself, then I think that, you know what, it's maybe time to again start building community. But beyond that, also start looking in and seeing, is there maybe something beyond this that I need? Is there something that maybe
Mm.
I'm and it's so difficult because there's so much of stigma around this. There's so much of stigma around reaching out, just like in the ADHD community, for example. I If you have ADHD, it's like there's all of these things that come in that like ADHD people, they can't focus, they can't sit still, they can't do this. There's all these stigmas that are attached to it, and
Yeah.
it can be really, like it can be really difficult for you to like just sit with it and be like, like it feels like you don't have anyone to reach out to. But I promise you, there's so many resources. There's so many communities that are available for so many people of so many different spaces. There's whatever it is that you're struggling with. I promise you, there's someone out there who can assist. There's someone out there who can help. And like I said, if you in this world and you in this space, seek help. You don't have to go like immediately straight to the psychiatrist or the psychologist and get like diagnosed. But there's no harm in going and having one or two like counseling sessions, just to see, is there anything that maybe I need to work on, is there anything I need to go through. Attend mental health workshops, attend just workshops that are geared towards self development, things that build community
Mhm.
but also uplift you as a person, like finding like little crafting hobby spaces where you don't feel like you can feel like, oh, okay, I have like something that gives me drive and purpose,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
essentially finding the places that make you feel a little bit less alone in the world. And shout out to Sugar Hope Sakina.
Everybody go follow. No, you know what? Everything, again, everything you're saying is so true. And I hope everyone is listening and everyone is taking into consideration that, like, if you're feeling alone and you feel like you cannot take this anymore, go get some help. It's okay. There's it's not wrong to ask for help. It's the best thing that you can do for yourself. And unfortunately, we have reached the end of the first part of Unspoken Truth. I have so many more questions for you, Mahdiya, and I wish we could continue this conversation all day long, honestly. I think mental health is something that's so close to my heart, and I would love to have this conversation all day long, but we have to end it now. Jazakallah so much for joining me today. Jazakallah to all of our listeners for listening in on this very, very interesting topic. Inshallah, we hope to see you later on in the comment section and next week, inshallah.
I mean, Jazakallah, Mamalu. It's been a pleasure.
I mean, it's been a pleasure having you on. So we are going to take an ad break and we will be back with our next host, inshallah.